This Friday, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier debuts on Disney+. Yes! So let's talk about it. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier takes place about 6 months after the events of Avengers Endgame and sees the two title characters facing new threats that have emerged after the blip and having to understand their own place in the world. Of all the announced Disney Plus Marvel shows, this is one of the ones I was most excited for because I knew what to make of it and what to expect. Contrast that with WandaVision. I didn't know what to make of a 1950s sitcom inside of the MCU, whereas this, it's dealing with characters I'm familiar with and a continuation of a couple of the best movies in the MCU, so naturally, I knew how to process them announcing this show. So did it live up to my expectations? I'll tell you in just a second. Join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about it? What's your excitement level for it? What are you expecting from it? Let's have a lively discussion down below. But this is a spoiler-free review, so don't talk about any specifics. And let's get started with the good. And right off the bat, the production value here is just phenomenal. The show kicks off with this action sequence that's been shown in several of the trailers with Falcon chasing these guys out of a plane, and it's simply remarkable that this is what they can do for a TV show these days. It's not a short sequence, it goes on, and all of it is believable, all of it is convincing with the way that it's shot, it's exciting. I mean, it's just as big of a sequence as you would see in an MCU film, but it's the kickoff to this TV show. And throughout the entire thing, I mean, it's set in different cities, different locations, all of it convincing. You feel like you're in these places, traveling around the globe and meeting people, having action sequences. All of it feels big and cinematic while being a TV show. Other big thing about this show is that it's very character-based. This is probably the most character-based the MCU has ever been, and the most we've seen the day-to-day lives of the characters. As much as it is this action spy show, we're getting into the lives of Bucky and Sam. We're seeing what their day-to-day life looks like when they're not doing the spy stuff. The day after you go on the crazy mission, what does the Falcon do? What does it look like when he's interacting with his sister? What does the Winter Soldier do now that he's on the other side of being a hero, but he still has this history and his best friend is no longer there for him in certain ways? So how does he process all of that? And that's what this show is really about. These two characters and the journey that they are on, trying to accept who they are. It has the familiar Winter Soldier Civil War elements. It has all of that, but it's also about the people involved. And because of that, it can be a bit more emotional than you're expecting at times, in particular when you're on Bucky's journey as this person who was forced to do horrible things for a very long time, and that haunts him to this day, and he's processing through that, and you see that throughout this episode in several different ways and in several different contexts. That's the journey that he's on, someone dealing with a very dark past, but it also provides opportunity for more natural humor. There is a good bit of humor sprinkled throughout, maybe not quite as much as the trailers hinted at, but the whole thing finds ways to have organic humor that flows out of the character's personality and the situations they're in, rather than some of the more set up punchline stuff or more quippy stuff that you see in some of the MCU films. It's much more paced out properly here and based off the characters themselves. Another thing I enjoyed about it is that it's just another look at the world after the blip from a different set of characters' perspective. And especially in this one, you're seeing Sam in spy settings, you're seeing him in a family setting, you're seeing him in very normal banky type settings. And so all these different people interact with him in different ways, and you see the dialogue that transpires kind of introduces some of the conflict that would arise in normal day-to-day life if you disappeared for 5 years, and the complications of things like bank loans. Where have you been for 5 years? And I know where you've been, but at the same time, what am I supposed to do as a banker? Some interesting ideas like thrown out there. And just seeing the world from all these different perspectives, I just enjoy that. And even little nice touches that the Avengers would be celebrities, and so Sam is trying to do little day-to-day things, but he's being interrupted as a celebrity and having to deal with that while having super normal problems at the same time that everyone else deals with. So there's an interesting little back and forth in that I appreciated. And the episode lays the foundation for the conflicts that we're gonna have throughout the season. There's hints at certain terrorist organizations rising up. There's elements of kind of what's going on with the US government and what they're trying to do in light of there being fewer heroes in the world. A bunch of things like that, setting up what you can tell will be the conflicts of the season, but without feeling like it needs to rush through things. Once you watch this first episode, it will become very clear that they shot this as like a 4 or 5 hour movie, and then they broke it up into these 6 episodes. And so this feels like the first act, the first half of the first act of a movie, setting up the characters, giving us a bit of action, establishing the tone, and giving us the threads that will be going down, but without needing to rush through everything. It's allowed to take its time because they have the whole story planned out. I had pretty high expectations going into this one, and it delivered on what I wanted. I got what I wanted out of the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects of the episode. Now, as we go into this, mixed aren't necessarily good or bad. The things that I want to discuss that maybe some people won't like, might disappoint some people. So I just want to establish your expectations going into it. And I'll just say right now, there isn't a bad section when it comes to this episode. I didn't have anything that I thought was just overtly bad, but there were some things in the mix section that would be sort of the things I would discuss as bad. So with that said, first off, there's not a ton of action in the episode. It kicks off with this fantastic sequence, and then there's a couple short action bits in the rest of the episode, but it's very character-based. It's much more character-based than action-based, and it's also more character-based than it is story-based. It starts some storylines and threads, but the episode itself doesn't set up a conflict that's overcome by the end of the episode. You're seeing the beginning of the story that's told throughout 6 episodes. It's the setup for everything. This is very much a setup episode rather than big action episode or big story episode. There's even some main cast members for the show that don't make any appearances here. And so we establish our 2 main characters, a couple of plot threads, and that's about it. Likewise, there's going to be people that are disappointed that they are seeing the Falcon and the Winter Soldier doing such mundane things. You go to the MCU to see the Falcon being the Falcon, flying with wings, punching guys in the face, not him going to a bank trying to get a loan. You don't want to see Metal Arm Guy playing Battleship with a girl while she asks why he's wearing gloves. So there's some people that might be disappointed by that or feel like it's a bit too slow as it's establishing these characters. And I could see, if the whole show's like that, I could see where you're coming from. I didn't mind any of that, but it definitely, if you go into the show expecting just non-stop action, that's not exactly what this is. And this show in many ways is sort of like the antithesis of WandaVision. WandaVision was designed to build intrigue and raise questions and getting you speculating as to what was going on, and you're just dropped in the middle of something with no context and you have no idea what's happening. This is the opposite of that. You will know exactly who these characters are, when things are taking place. It's very straightforward. It's exploring them and the journey they're on as characters, not raising a bunch of questions in intrigue. And so it's a very different type of show. And I think that's a good thing that the MCU decided to have these as the first 2, one that's so incredibly weird and different, and one that's more straightforward and taking characters that have been side characters, putting them front and center, and just spending a long time getting to know them and using them as a way to explore this world that is the MCU and what's going on after the blip. And along the same lines of the WandaVision comparison, whereas that one was very alienating because it was so different, but it was also so refreshing because it was so different, this one is comforting because it's so familiar, but at the same time, it's so familiar that it doesn't have that as much of the freshness to it. So that's what's interesting, that they had these two as the two launching ones, because they have such different strength and weaknesses to each of them. Some people will look at this and they'll be like, yeah, we've already spent time with these characters. We've already kind of done this genre, been there, done that. Other people will love that about this film. For me, that's kind of what drew me to it, is that it was like, yeah, like checking out more of this type of thing that I enjoy from the MCU, but taking these side characters and putting them front and center. I'm all for that. Other people will see it and it's just too conventional for them, and so they might not have as much spark for them. Might not pop as much. Real quick, before I give you my final thoughts on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, tell me what you thought down below in the comment section once you've checked it out, or what your level of excitement is for this show. Also know I've done a ton of Marvel Disney Plus content, talked about my excitement for all the announced shows. I reviewed each episode of WandaVision, did a bunch of WandaVision rankings. You can check those out right up here if you want more content. This was a solid kick-off to a new show. It definitely is more familiar and not as action-based as you might be expecting, but it's a great study of these two characters and established a plot line and a set of conflicts that I'm excited to see the rest of. I don't like to give letter scores and number scores for television episodes, but I'll just say I give it a thumbs up. I do recommend you check it out. This is one that MCU fans or fans of spy action shows in general should thoroughly enjoy. Share your thoughts down below in the comments section. I'll be reviewing each episode in a spoiler fashion the day that they drop each Friday, and keep talking movies and TV too much.